Hello everybody and welcome to Car Confections. Now sitting behind me right now is a Volvo XC90. It's a 2024 Volvo XC90, but this is the Recharge plug-in hybrid, which means that we have a range test coming up.
That's right.
So let's go ahead and get into it.
Now before we head out on the road and get this real-world range test started, let's talk a little bit about those baseline specifications. So with this model, we have a pretty large battery pack. It was enhanced a couple years ago. It's going to be an 18.8 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery pack. All together with the turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that this is paired to and a very powerful electric motor, it's going to be making 455 horsepower. And then of course, most importantly, you have the range figure. So the EPA is rating this at 32 miles of pure electric range. Now, like I said, this has 455 horsepower, but we're not going to be performance testing it in this review. We're going to go out on a real world sample around town to see how this actually performs. So unlike some of the things you may have seen on other people's channels, we're going to do things a little different here with Car Confections. We're going to go with a real world scenario, not just cruising on the interstate at 70 miles an hour. We're going to go through city driving, highway driving, interstate driving, and stop and go driving on a nice loop and see how this actually holds up when we put it to the test in real world conditions. So let's go ahead and head out on the road.
All right guys, so here we are starting out in our real world range test in this XC90 Recharge model. Now, like Drew said on the outside, this vehicle is actually rated for 32 miles of EPA range, or EPA estimated at 32 miles. The car is actually displaying 36 miles on a full charge. So we're gonna see if Volvo's estimate is more accurate or if what the EPA is saying, or if they're both completely inaccurate and you're gonna get a lot more in the real world. But we're going to find out in this video. Now, before we get too far along in here, I do want to talk about the rules for our range test that all of our range tests are going to follow. Now, first of all, we follow all the speed limits during our range test. We also are in the eco drive mode if that's applicable. In this particular XC90, we're in the pure mode, which means that we're never going to kick on the gas engine. It's just going to stay in electric mode. Right. The climate control is set to 72 degrees, and it's an automatic setting. And then as far as the region, it's in the maximum region mode as well. Right.
In this vehicle, there's not really different levels you can choose. You just bump the shifter back. It goes into B, which just maximizes your regenerative braking as you come to a stop.
Additionally, we're not going to do any hard accelerations or anything like that. We're just going to keep up with the flow of traffic. We say about 50% throttle or less unless absolutely necessary for safety.
Exactly. With this, it has a pretty powerful electric motor, so it will, I anticipate, allow us, even in a relatively large vehicle, a 3-row luxury crossover, to keep up with traffic pretty easily with just this electric motor.
Now we are in the first leg of our loop. We have a designated loop that comprises about 30 miles of driving that's mixed between city driving, highway driving, interstate driving, and we call it stop and go driving. We think this represents pretty much what the average person might do on their daily commute, and really kind of mixes a lot of different types of driving because, as we said on the outside, a lot of range tests, they focus just on the highway side of things or on the interstate cruising, and that's not really what people do on the daily. They might take it to the city and then get on the interstate, but they're not going to just hop on the interstate and immediately go on that model.
Yeah, most likely they're not going to be doing that. You know, it's just, I think, important to really simulate the real world conditions, because going at 70 miles an hour in a purely electric mode would be pretty much the least efficient way to utilize this. Most of the time, what you would really want to do is be utilizing this electric range in the city and then maybe the gasoline engine while you're on the interstate. Nevertheless, you know, we want to see if you could make it to, say, your hypothetical workplace and back without using any gas would be definitely a real good accomplishment for a large luxury SUV like this. And you know, we're testing it out here, starting out with the city driving. This is going to be you know, kind of a mixture of stopping at red lights, speeding up to about 45 miles an hour in a kind of suburban setting, which a lot of you guys are going to be living in, something very similar to this.
Well guys, we are pretty much wrapping up our city drive portion of our loop around Lexington here. So we want to have a checkpoint before we head into phase 2, which is the interstate drive portion. Now, so far we've gone almost exactly 10 miles. 10.3 miles is how far we've gone. So our total here is a little over 10 miles of city driving, and the vehicle is now showing that we have 25 miles of projected range. Now, if you see me typing on my phone here, I'm typing these numbers in so we can add it later into the video. I'm not trying to text and film this video at the same time. And one of the interesting things about this XC90 that we're noticing, at least, is that there's not really a lot of electric vehicle information going on. This is a plug-in hybrid, but you could definitely tell it was a gas car first, if that makes any sense, because they don't have any type of detailed charging statistics. I can't tell at all what battery percentage I'm on. It looks to be, according to the bars, almost exactly 3/4 of a battery, so I'm gonna estimate that we're sitting at about 75% battery status after this.
Right, we're trying to be as scientific as we can with the data we have, but of course we're going to run this down to 0, so you're going to get that full number at the end of the day. But this is just kind of a check-in to show where we're setting at for now.
And here we are getting onto our interstate portion of the drive. Now, I'm sure you guys are curious as to the efficiency of this XC90 so far in this drive, and at a 75% state of charge after driving 10 miles, that means that we've used 4.7 kilowatt hours of our battery pack, since it is 18.8 kilowatt hours total, and we've gone 10.3 miles. So 10.3 miles divided by 4.7, we're sitting at 2.19 miles per kilowatt hour for this XC90 so far in our city portion of the drive. Now, we're here on the interstate. This is typically where that number actually tends to fall a little bit. We have our cruise control set on 70 miles an hour. All the conditions are the same here, and we're going to see how it holds up over the highway part of this drive, or this interstate part of this drive, excuse me. And before we get off the interstate here, I do just want to say that this Volvo XC90 with the air suspension certainly does have a really good ride quality here on the interstate. Certainly have been impressed with that. But we are wrapping up our interstate drive portion. So let's go ahead and do another check-in. So at this check-in, after getting off the interstate there, we have driven a total of 21.9 miles. And about 10 of that was on the interstate, 10 of it was in the city, and now we are heading into the highway section of our drive. So at 21.9 miles, we are sitting at, it looks like, maybe a little bit under half of the battery. Once again, like I said, they don't have the battery percentage status, at least not where I can find it. It's not in the gauge cluster, and it's not here on this infotainment screen, so I can't tell you the exact percentage, but it looks to be maybe a little under half, according to that bar there that I...
Yeah, just slightly under half, so I would say 45%.
Yeah, so if we're sitting at 45% battery, that means that we've used 55% of it. So we've used 10.3 kilowatt hours, 10.34 kilowatt hours of battery capacity, and we've driven 21.9 miles, which means that our average efficiency is sitting at 2.117 miles per kilowatt hour. And as far as the projected range, we are sitting at about 14 miles of projected range left, according to Volvo. So we're going to see how it's going to hold up. I believe it will be getting pretty much what Volvo is saying, honestly. As far as
pretty good so far.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty good at predicting how many miles we're traveling, and it seems pretty accurate, not gonna lie, because some of these EVs, they're very conservative. Some of them are a little liberal, that's for sure. They're, you know, a little high on their estimations, but this Volvo seems very accurate so far. It says we're gonna go 14 more miles, and on this drive we have approximately about 15 more miles left, because we've set it to be about the same range as some of these plug-in hybrids are getting.
All right, so here we are entering onto what we are calling the highway section. As opposed to the interstate where you're going 70, this section is going to be 55 miles per hour.
All right, guys, so we are getting pretty close to ending our highway section of this drive, and we're getting pretty close to depleting the range of this XC90, but we have been driving for quite some time at this point. It feels like it's been probably close to an hour of our driving here, and the range is still going. We still have 7 miles left. I'm actually just going to go ahead and declare, we're just a little bit ahead of where it is. I'm going to go ahead and declare this the end of that. I'm going to snap the picture, and this is the end of our highway section. As far as our trip here, we have gone 32.1 miles so far on our drive. The Volvo is still saying that we have 7 miles of range left. So yeah, that is quite impressive so far. That is above the EPA estimate already. 32 miles is what this vehicle is rated at, and we still have 6 miles of range left according to Volvo. It looks to be a little under a quarter battery, so I'd say about 20% is left on the battery pack according to the little thing that they have in the gauge cluster here. So that means that we've used 80% of the battery pack, 18.8 kilowatt hours. We've used 80% of it, which means we've used 15 kilowatt hours, and we've driven 32 miles, 32.1, which means we're sitting at an average efficiency of 2.13 miles per kilowatt hour, which this thing has been very consistent, honestly. I'm a little surprised by that because the last few check-ins, you know, it's been sitting at 2.11, this is 2.13, and the first one was 2.19 miles per kilowatt hour. So we've been very consistently sitting at 2.1 to 2.2 miles per kilowatt hour for this XC90, regardless of if we're driving in the city or on the interstate or on the highway.
Now, we hadn't really declared it yet, but we are in the 4th section of the video. This is gonna be the stop and go section, just kind of going at the lowest type of speed here for the last little bit. This will be what finishes off our battery. Of course, it's pretty exciting in the sense to see where we're going to end up, because we are already above the EPA estimate. So how much better are we doing than that EPA estimate? And by the way, the temperature, I do want to point that out as well. The ambient temperature today is 86 degrees. So about equal to the other 2 products we've tested out in our real world range test so far.
Alrighty guys, we have wrapped up pretty much the battery pack. It's sitting at 2 miles of projected range left. So we are at the last little juice that's left in the tank.
The final countdown. Da-da-da-da.
Yeah, exactly. There's, you know, honestly a lot of suspense. I'm pretty excited about this because we do already know, like Drew said, that this is actually overachieving what the EPA says. The EPA was rating this at 32 miles on a charge, and well, the last check-in we were already at 32 miles. So we've concluded the stop and go section, and then now we're just kind of tacking on a little bit of extra driving to see how much this thing is going to actually go on a single charge, which I'm pretty excited for, and also to get you those final numbers on the efficiency of this battery and see, you know, just how this ranks among other plug-in hybrids.
When this says a mile, it means a mile, doesn't it? Lord,
it's been a long mile. I've had my camera ready to snap it as soon as it turns on, but yeah, it's hasn't ticked off yet. See how much further it's gonna go. Oh, it says 0. It still has not kicked on the engine though.
Yeah, we're still in pure electric. 0-1 miles.
That's weird, but maybe it's talking about range left.
All right, there it went.
Okay, there we go. Snap a picture. Those are our official measurements. All right, so give me a second to math it out here and let you know the final numbers, but I'm going to tell you it did overachieve what the EPA was estimating, that's for sure. And official numbers are in for this range test. Yes, it did overachieve, like I said. Drum roll, please, on the final mileage that we were able to go on a single charge. 41.7 miles.
Wow.
So nearly 10 miles more than what the EPA estimated range is for this XC90. Very impressive there. As far as other stats, of course, we used all 18.8 kilowatt hours because this was charged to 100% before we took off today, which means that we averaged 2.21 miles per kilowatt hour, which for a big, heavy 3-row SUV like this that's luxurious, I think is not too bad. Certainly, you know, this vehicle honestly was designed a while ago as well, so it wasn't designed really with electrification in mind. So it's very impressive that Volvo has been able to really get the type of range that we got out of this XC90 Recharge.
Yeah, a couple years ago when they updated this to the newest hybrid system, this new Recharge model really makes a big difference. I mean, you're adding a third more battery capacity than what it previously had. You have a third more range. So yeah, really impressive overall that this was overachieving. I thought that it would probably be right at the EPA estimate personally, just because of how large it is. But it really did a great job today.
But guys, that's where we're gonna leave off on this range test. We hope you enjoyed watching this video or found it helpful in your purchasing decisions, because guess what? You know, living with this XC90 for the last week, I mean, I was very curious to see how far it would go on a charge, and I'm sure you guys are as well. You know, sometimes the EPA estimates are above or below what you're actually going to get in the real world. So hopefully this represents what you guys would do on the daily basis, and hopefully it represents that you're going to actually be able to get a lot more range out of your XC90 than what the EPA is estimating. It's actually about
for sure.
Yeah,
I think you'd be able to get the 32 miles probably just on the highway completely, which is maybe, who knows, maybe that's how they test it. No one really knows. They don't really even tell you how they test it. That's why we think this real world test is very useful for you guys. If you also agree, make sure to go down below and subscribe. Let us know in the comments as well, and we'll keep making more of these as we test out more plug-in hybrid and electric vehicles here in Kentucky. Also, make sure to check us out on TikTok and Instagram, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.